Perfect. I always say they really got to change that voice.
Yeah. It sounds so like intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Uh,
Okay. So I guess let me get my questions up here. Um, we can start with a super easy one. I think
hmm.
one thing that I've always been super interested in is that
Yeah.
connection between digestion and nutrition and mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not always intuitive, so I would love to hear
Yeah.
your take on that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So let me just scroll to my little section here. Yeah. So, healthy digestion is such a huge part of the puzzle when it comes to feeling good. Normally, when there's something going on the outside of your body or something going on the inside, it has to do and is tied with your digestion. Um, and I think a lot more of that we're learning about, especially when it comes to the gut or the microbiome, which sounds really scientific, but it's actually just your personal collection of bacteria that you've collected like since you were a baby. And they're just learning so much more about the gut. It's actually now being called the body's largest sensory organ. So it's almost like an organ in itself. And it's sensory because it collects information from the food that you eat, from the hormones in your blood, from immune cells, all that kind of stuff. And we can take care of our gut by eating proper foods like fermented foods and fresh fruits and vegetables, that kind of thing. But the most interesting field of research that's really taking off now is the connection between the gut and the brain. So more and more they're seeing what we're eating affects how we feel. So one of the examples that's maybe a little more extreme would be, people with, they're seeing more cases of depression in people who have celiac or Crohn's or colitis, like these kind of serious digestive issues. But even just gluten sensitivity. So a lot of people have a sensitivity to gluten. So, yeah, it can cause physical symptoms like bloating and gas and that kind of thing. But it can also, like a lot of clients will say, like, I just feel foggy, like I can't concentrate. And usually when we take gluten out of the picture, they're like, okay, that's improved. And it takes weeks to even notice, but there's that connection. And even with something as simple as sugar, like sugar is in so many things that we eat, in packaged foods, like we all love it. It's in sodas, it's in whatever. And it makes us feel good, but it also causes physical symptoms like type 2 diabetes, but it can also cause like anxiety and stress and mood disorders. Like people get depressed when they don't have sugar or they're trying to cut it out of their diet. So those are sort of the extreme examples that that research is showing. So it's just, I feel like it's become more important than ever, aside from like the weight loss conversation and your clothes fitting better. It's like if you eat better, you're also going to feel better mentally.
Yeah.
So I started working with clients who have been in motor vehicle accidents. Like for a nutritionist, I started working with her in February, which is a totally new area for me. But a lot of these clients are depressed because of their accident and just their physical limitations now. And a lot of them have turned to eating sugar or fast food or, refined carbs that make up a lot of their diet, and it makes them feel worse. So my job is to say, okay, let's start to change that. Let's start to like have you eat more vegetables and drink more water, and you're gonna feel better mentally. So I really love learning more about, the health, how you can take care of your gut, and just because of how it makes you feel. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
it's so fascinating to me because it was really weird as an athlete getting like messaging about healthy diets and, trying to maintain a certain type of body for my
Sure.
sport.
Yeah.
And I remember learning about like serotonin being in the brain and in the gut,
Yeah.
and like being encouraged still to eat a lot, but of good things that like
Right.
nourish your body better.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for diving into that a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. I actually, right before our conversation today, an opportunity came up where I get to speak to a group of like teenage girls who are on the ringette team in Ottawa.
Mm.
And their coach, I think, used to play for Team Canada, but she's really wanting to have girls at that age hear about how to nourish your body instead of this
Yeah.
diet culture. It's like, no, actually, let's teach them what foods to eat to like fuel their bodies, to give them energy, and to promote sleeping properly and ways to cope with stress. Like, these are such important things that, I mean, when I was a teenager, nobody was talking to me about that. So it's like we need to start talking to our, even my kids, my poor boys. They're tired of hearing about how bad sugar is for them, but it's like, you have to start talking to kids when they're younger, because they understand, they know. So
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think they can identify really well with like how they feel too, like you're talking about, like
yeah.
what goes in makes them feel good,
Yeah.
versus other things, because the science is totally lost.
Yes. Yeah. It's about simplifying it. Totally. Yeah.
Amazing. So pivoting a little bit
Mm.
into your role and kind of working with clients, what is
Hmm.
something that you wish they knew either about what that relationship is going to look like, or nutrition in general when they come in to meet you for the first time?
Yeah. So when I first looked at this question, the first thing that came to mind, and I wish I could show this to clients, is kind of a glimpse of their future selves. Like, not necessarily how they look, but how they're going to feel if they make certain changes. I think that would be motivating if they could sort of see the results.
Yeah.
Um, you know, because I feel like there's so much emotion tied to food. Like, it's so different when you say to someone, "Oh, let's start a exercise program."
Right.
Like, that's just like, okay, I'm going to move my body. Like, I'm not going to feel bad doing this. But if I tell someone like, you know, that like hot chocolate that you have like twice a day, we need to work on that. Like, that's just like tons of sugar that's not making you feel good. Like, and
Yeah.
there's so much comfort and emotion tied to food and eating. So it
Mhm.
makes my job really difficult sometimes, because I have to get clients to trust me and sort of get to the root of why they're eating a certain way. But also just that clients know that there's no one size fits all. Like, if you're going to try and do a diet, or I mean, I sometimes run group programs because sometimes you need like a bit of a boost, or that motivation to like go and make long-term changes. But for the most part, it's like an individual type of thing, and that's how I get most of my really good work done, is one-on-one. So learning someone's schedule and being like, let's talk about what foods you can actually make this week. Like, you're really busy, so
Yeah.
what do you have time for, and I'll tell you what you can fit in and what healthy foods to eat. So it's really individual, and I would love people to know that diets just don't work, and they're just frustrating, and it's a vicious cycle. So the other thing that I really is important for me, and how I start a lot of my meetings, is tell me your top 3 reasons of why you want to make these changes and why you came to me. So identifying your why, because motivation is like a diet in a way. Like, it doesn't last. Like, you can be really super into something for like 3 or 4 weeks. That's usually the time when I see clients on their food journal starting to go back to their old ways. And I'm like, okay, let's go back to your why. Remember the beginning. You want to like be stronger so that you can play with your kids, or, whatever your 3 main reasons were. Let's go back to that, because that's going to push you through. And it's those days where you don't feel like doing it and your motivation is gone, and you still do the best that you can, even if it's 10% of what you can give. That's going to make all the difference in the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, like you make it about consistency rather than like perfection, because everyone's gonna slip every now and then and be like, those
Yeah.
hot chocolates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And that's okay. But it's
totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that sort of is another big part of my philosophy, is balance. And everyone's balance is different. And you have to figure out I work with people to help them figure out their own personal balance. And you need to find that by making mistakes, or I
Yeah.
shouldn't say mistakes, but like kind of going down that road where you're like, oh, I had like 3 pieces of pizza and I didn't feel good. So next time I'm going to have like two and see how I feel. Or, like you work with those by just tuning into how you feel and finding that balance, because all food should be on the table. Food is amazing. Like I think and talk about food all the time because I love it. But it's like you have to find that balance that's going to make you feel good. Because that's what it's all about. So
Absolutely.
mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, so you give so much to all of these people
Mm-hmm.
and helping them create routines and plans and food logs, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how you care for yourself in all of that and your nutrition journey kind of alongside all of those people.
Yeah. Um, I mean, anytime that you take care of other people, whether it's clients or for me, it's my kids or my husband or my sisters or your parent, like whoever, you have to recognize that you also have to care for yourself. Um, excuse me, I think I really learned that after I had my second son, especially, I was like, there's no such thing as like having more time, but I'm like, I need to create specific time for just being by myself. So I started with 2 days a week where I'd get up like 30 minutes before my kids, which is hard to do when you have like babies because you're like, sleep is so precious. But I'm like, I feel like this is going to I need this. So I would wake up 30 minutes before them and, I'd do a workout and I'd pray or just like mentally prepare for the day. And I couldn't believe how good I felt when they woke up, because I was like, now I'm ready. I have energy. I've like cleared out maybe some thoughts or anxious things that would have just been sitting there and I wouldn't have been able to deal with it. Um, so then 2 days sort of turned to 3 and 4. And now I do it most days, maybe not on the weekends. But I recognize that it's something I absolutely need. And then throughout COVID as well, I was like, I need to talk to a therapist, like it's time. And I think you don't even have to have a specific like issue, I think it's just like, how can I best navigate any challenges that are going to come up in my life, whether it's relationship things or career things, or I noticed, especially through COVID, how I was talking to myself. Like all of a sudden I was like, whoa, like
Yeah.
so just like being more aware of how we talk to ourselves and just being able to take different challenging situations in life and deal with it the best that we can. And being okay with being vulnerable, I think is really important. um just being okay to say like I don't have it all together and I want to just be better. And I think so that's kind of part of my self-care, is taking time for myself, recognizing when I need that time, and then making the time to talk to a professional and unload on them opposed to like my poor husband or mother-in-law or whoever. So
For sure.
mhm.
Amazing. Well, that's so good to hear. And you're absolutely right. I think there's definitely this preconceived notion about therapy of like you have to be in crisis and at rock bottom to reach out to a therapist. And that is
Yeah.
just so far
Yeah.
truth. It can really just be about like how to be the best version of yourself and
Yeah.
be that in the world every day. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I want to make sure, I think, as a nutritionist, that I share that with people, because I
Mhm.
think, and this is kind of probably what sparked your whole conversation, is someone who looks at me maybe on my Instagram photo or something would be like, oh, she has it all together. She probably eats perfect every day, gets like 8 hours of sleep, like never stressed. And it's like, that's actually the farthest thing from the truth. And I
Yeah.
want to get better on social media of being more honest, like, okay, I ordered pizza tonight. I love it. Like I had a glass of wine. I gave my kids chicken strips. Like all of that happens. And I think this is kind of along the theme of sharing our stories. It can be like Instagram stories, real ones, and just seeing more of that. And because I think it's really comforting when you hear that someone else has the same stuff going on as you. Um, it just it just makes you feel better, and you're like, not trying to live up to this like impossible standard, that fake standard that social media creates. So
Absolutely.
mm,
Yeah. And yeah, you touched on this a little bit, but do you think there's anything in particular that nutritionists struggle with mental health wise? Um, yeah. And why would it be so important for them to also prioritize their mental health?
yeah, I mean, I think it comes to like kind of what I touched on is like, maybe appearance, or always having that high energy or never being stressed out. I guess always kind of communicating a healthy persona. And healthy could be physical health or mental health. It's interesting because I noticed I did this. So we went to Jamaica at the end of August, and it was finally my turn to get COVID. And then I came back and I'm like, I didn't want to tell people because I'm a nutritionist, and it like could mean that I'm not as healthy as I should be. And then I'm like, what am I even think? Like, those are those stories we tell ourselves that you have to really stop and recognize. So I've had COVID. Like, I think those little things where, yeah, there is a certain level that I hold myself to that I have to be careful of, of this kind of perfect, persona. And I think, you
Yeah.
know, it's, yeah, it's something that I have to be really aware of. And, it's okay for me to not eat perfect, and I don't, and, not get the right sleep, and I have stressful days, and just communicating that, I think.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I'm gonna mess up the actual quote, but
Mm.
somebody shared this with me once. It was like there's a difference between being perfect and being intentional. And
Okay.
that just really resonated because I think it's like, what do you do consistently and
Mm-hmm.
intentionally versus what do you do perfectly? And nobody does anything perfectly,
No.
including social media. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like that you're
Yeah.
sharing or trying to share more about um, that consistency, but then not perfection.
Yeah, totally. And like just going back to more about the self-care, I think it's also recognizing things that build you up and things that drain you.
Yeah.
And again, on the social media conversation, I have to be in the right mood to open Instagram. Like, and I have to go through and sort of clean house and take away some of the accounts that you look at because you don't want to look away, but they're not really contributing. Because I think there's really great things on social media, that you can learn from and inspiring, but then there's things that you don't need to see that just I found made me feel worse about myself after looking at it. So I think that was one thing through COVID that I really recognized was limiting time on social media and just being ready to open it and say, why am I going on? Am I going to share something that's going to inspire someone? Am I going to look at someone's feed that I know is going to build me up? So, just recognizing that, I think is really important. And it's, I think, a message that I especially want to teach my kids as they start to, because I don't know what social media is going to look like for them. Like, it terrifies me. And I can't keep them from it, but I can teach them sort of, you know, you have to, consume it really responsibly.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
It can be really amazing, but it can also be, ugh.
Oh, yeah. I went down the TikTok road and I'm like, I'm not built for this. This is like a what's your generation? I forget the letter.
I don't even know because
Okay.
I'm right on the cusp of
Okay.
millennial and Gen Z. Like I'm
Okay.
98. So
Okay. Well, I'm 82, so I'm like, it's meant for the youngers. Like, I can't do it. So I'm out on TikTok.
I would agree with you. TikTok was a bit much.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so pivoting a little bit back to that kind of like client interaction. So
Mhm.
your day to day talking with people and kind of carrying their stories and their nutrition journeys. I'm sure has an impact on you in some ways, especially if it's a really difficult journey. So
Mm-hmm.
curious kind of how you navigate that when you're working with people who are potentially really, really struggling with this.
Yeah, it's I don't think I've like figured out how to totally separate it yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I said, I just started working with clients that have really intense stories. And I found, especially because it's motor vehicle accident, and some of them have been in cars, but some of them have also been hit by cars. So now when I'm like out biking with my kids and stuff, like I find that I've become this like very paranoid person because I see what a physical injury does to someone's life. And it's so I don't know, I'm still like struggling with how, to not let that affect me so much. And I think, like I talked about before, especially when it comes to food, 9 times out of 10, it's not just about someone's eating habits. It's like they're eating a certain way because of another deeper reason. So sometimes I feel like I'm not cut out for the job that I do because, yeah, like I can tell you to drink a smoothie and have more water and eat a salad, but it's like just not that simple. So yeah, sometimes client stories keep me up at night, but I think that means that I really care. And
Yeah.
I think I need to. Like, my passion is to help people because if I can help them nourish their bodies, uh, they're also going to feel better. So, yeah, it's a passion of mine, and sometimes it keeps me up. But I think that means I care. And I'm Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, so the best I can. I don't engage on the weekends. That's my family time. I don't want to think about it. If it's something like I can't open my food journal, then of course I'm going to help you so that you can like get moving. But if it's I don't engage on the weekend. So I have like some boundaries there. So I think that helps.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember what you were saying earlier about how like food is so tied to our emotions and to our mental health. And I think you're so right. Like a lot of times people's nutrition habits are very tied to their life experiences and what's happening internally. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious how you navigate some of those situations where maybe you have to refer somebody to a mental health specialist and kind of, yeah, that's got to be really messy water. So how do you
Yeah.
navigate those situations? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because when I first started doing this, I took a distance ed course. So I literally learned by myself. We were traveling at the time and it was great. It was before I had kids. And then I kind of got thrown into this industry. And I found that a lot of nutritionists are sort of just out for themselves. It's kind of cutthroat. And whereas I'm like, we're all trying to help people. So
Yeah.
what your experience counseling someone, you could help me counsel someone better and help them. So I finally kind of found that with a naturopath in Ottawa. So she started a clinic that I now work with. And so she's a naturopath, but she's like, after I sort of diagnosed someone with a hormone issue, let's say, and I would tell them what to eat for a couple of days, after that, I wouldn't see them and they would just go off in their life. And so she brought me in, and then she brought in a therapist, and she brought in like a holistic coach. And because I think, I think that there's so many different aspects to your health. So yes, if, someone's really struggling, you know, I will definitely delegate because I also can't solve everyone's problems. Like, there's certain tips I can give about stress, but if I'm seeing that it's more than what I can handle, then I definitely delegate. Um, so yeah, and yeah, there's just so much to eating. And I'm reading a book in the middle of it. It's called Women, Food, and God. And it talks about eating, but I think it can be a lot of different things where anytime we do something that's sort of in an unhealthy way, so maybe overeat or undereat, we're trying to shut something else out. So there's always something going on. There's a story we're telling ourselves. There's something painful that we don't want to deal with. And so like usually it's like, what is that thing that you're trying not to sit with? So maybe again, this would maybe be out of my realm, but if that doesn't spark someone to be like, okay, I have to go figure out, that would spark them to go figure out, what are you not sitting with? And then we can sort of work in tandem, me and, someone that you want to talk to about what you're not sitting with, because that's usually what it's tied to. So, mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. My brain is just turning with some of my own experiences there. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like I think so often it's a coping mechanism. Just got the running out of time
Oh
notification.
yeah. 10 minutes.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
It's coming up. So
Yeah.
if it ends, we can just log back onto the same link, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, but those books, they also help me with, again, being vulnerable and open about like my stuff. Like, yeah, on a Friday night, or I have a glass of wine or two, and it's like, why am I having this? What am I not wanting to sit with? Is it something that happened this week that I want to just like shut out for a little bit, or, any type of thing? And I think there are, that's fine, a glass or two of wine, but there are things that you can do in a healthy way to cope with those things that you're not sitting with. And typically for me, that goes to exercise or yoga or talking to a therapist or talking to a friend or just being more aware of that, you know, I think can help with, dealing with those things in a healthier way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good cue. And I'm thinking like, yeah, a good cue for something to bring up with your therapist when you turn to food as a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think about that some more now.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the other hand, too, with food, it could just be that like there's so many different aspects to it. It could be how someone was raised, like always finish your plate, or,
Yeah.
people might just grab dessert after lunch because it's a habit, like not even they really want it. Like, so there's always little strategies as well. So, there's so much to it and every client's different. So the first meeting with the client is always a challenge, because it's like, what are we dealing with here? And I always question, can I really help you? And I end up, yes, I can help you, but it's like a puzzle that you sort of have to put together every time. So
Yeah, for sure.
mm-hmm.
And you've talked a little bit about kind of your own experiences through this too, and sharing that a little bit. And I know in therapy settings, it's really important to maintain that neutrality. And a lot of times the therapist is not allowed to, or not
Yeah.
allowed to, but discouraged from sharing too much of their own personal experiences. So
Yeah.
I'm curious how that works in your interactions with your clients, and how you kind of go about that boundary of like what to share and whether or not it's beneficial for the client.
Yeah. I think what I do like to share is kind of the human side of me. So, yes, I ordered pizza the other day or gave my kids chicken strips or whatever. But I'm very careful not to share too much about my own eating and exercise habits, because I do know how individual it really is. And what works for me isn't going to work for you. And what I saw the other day on Instagram that I thought was amazing, there's this trend happening where healthcare, people in the healthcare industry, so let's say a personal trainer or something would say, here's what I eat in a day. And it would be like a reel of what they eat in a day. And then there was one that was like, here's what I eat in a day. And she's like, it's none of your business, because what I eat isn't what you are supposed to eat, because so I just thought that was so interesting, and I loved it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I like sharing, let's say a healthy something packaged food I found at Costco, because it saved me time and it could maybe save you time.
Yeah.
But what I eat and how much I eat and when I eat, I just think, that's a personal thing. So I'm really aware, and I've had therapists before who have gone on tangents about their own life, and I'm like, we're different completely. So I've become really aware of that in my own counseling. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right. It's so dependent on the person too, because sometimes like they need to hear like, the person who's helping them is not perfect and has struggled with certain things too. And like you said, that human element of it is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had therapists before too, or just I'm like, this is a
Yeah. Am I counseling you here or what's happening? Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and kind of in a similar vein with like confidentiality and protecting your client's privacy and what they're sharing with you. Um, has it ever been difficult to find like outlets and ways sometimes to maybe talk through things that are stressful or like you said, keeping you up at night or people's stories who are really heavy? Yeah, how have you navigated that?
Yeah, I mean, I have to keep it pretty high level with most people because, like you said, there is confidentiality, like obviously never names and things like that.
Yeah.
I think I do share with my husband. He's probably the one that I talk to the most about it because I have to. And sometimes I find like I get so close to things that I'm like, I need almost like a second opinion, like someone who's completely removed from the situation and, has a different perspective on, I don't know, something to say to someone or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I can't go into too much detail. And I think I do carry a lot of the stories myself. Like there's constantly something spinning in my head about a client. Like, what if I say that, or what I should have said that, or. So I think maybe it affects me more than I realize when I become aware of it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you're able to talk about it a little bit though, because
Yeah.
I know, or from what I've heard, like talking with other care providers really in any capacity is like that's really hard. Sometimes that work
Yeah.
related stress just kind of sits in you and you can't express it in full really with
Yeah.
any uh,
Yeah.
which I
Totally.
is a really important thing to acknowledge about the work that you all do. So
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because I just finished working with a client who is a psychotherapist, like that's her job.
mm,
So when our session was done, we just kept talking for a little bit about counseling, and she just had an interesting perspective. She's like, you can't make someone change. Like you can give them a recommendation and you can give a strategy, but you can't like put some food in their mouth. Like you can't like make them change a behavior. So I don't know. I think sometimes I hold myself to like a really high standard if someone isn't isn't maybe progressing how I want them to, or it's just more of a challenging client. So it was nice to be able to talk to another person in counseling, and she's part of Sequence Wellness as well with my naturopath, and that's what I've been seeking for so long, is like more of a community of counselors and other healthcare providers, who we can just like share what's working, what's not working. Tell me what you were challenged with today. So, because I think a lot of us work individually and now we're doing virtual. So we don't have offices that we're going into. So, yeah, so I love what Dr. Golding has put together. So that was helpful.
yeah, amazing. I mean, especially with just how connected, like we've been talking about, everything is,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's exercise or mental health or nutrition, like
Yeah.
absolutely everything is connected. And so I really love that and hope that that more comes to fruition in the future. Like people who are in your kind of role are able
Mm-hmm.
to speak with each other and talk
Yeah.
about how things are going. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I think we also shared, her and myself, just how it's difficult. I think I would love to help more people, but I think like my services aren't covered by a lot of people's insurance policies, and same with psychotherapists. And I think there's such a huge financial barrier there. And I just like feel like I see so many people that I'm like, I could help more people. But right now, our economy's in a really bad place, like with COVID and everything. So I'm finding that I'm just not getting the same volume because I think it's difficult for people. It's expensive, and we're not taking care of our mental and physical well-being because of that. So anyway, it's a frustration of mine.
I feel you. Yeah. And also I think our meeting has less than a minute. So what I can do is end this one and then
Okay.
just rejoin that same
Yeah.
link that's in the meeting invite.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.